So welcome to my session. So in this session I'm going to cover these topics like about the service. So which service generally we use in the Kubernetes production environment. So as you all are aware about, there are three types of service. One is node port and cluster IP and the load balancer. But in production environment, which service mostly uses? So those things we have to discuss in this session, and how traffic flow from inside the pod to the outside network. So this is also a very common question in the interview. So the interview asks you, tell me about your traffic flow from outside network to inside the pod, and which service generally we have to use in the Kubernetes production environment, where we have to define the URL of the application so that you can access the application by using the URL. Okay, so those things also a very important question. And how do you make sure your application running over HTTPS? So these are also very important topics. Okay, so how do we generate the SSL certificate and TLS certificate? How do we import the TLS certificate in application? So these are the very important, and definitely you have to work on it in the real-time project, because without this you can't able to access the application. So these are the very important topics, and definitely interview also ask about it, about these topics. Okay, so suppose if you see the how many type of service available in the Kubernetes. So types of service, Kubernetes. So here you can see, like, generally there are three types and four types of service here. Okay, the cluster IP service and the node port service and the load balancer service. Okay, so cluster IP, node port, load balancer. So if interview asks you, tell me about if you, because if you attend the interview, definitely mention some relevant experience in Kubernetes. Okay, but you haven't worked in real time environment. So if interview asks you, tell me about which type of service you have worked in the production environment, and if you answer like, yeah, I use the node port service or load balancer service, so then interview understand like you haven't worked in the real time environment, because in the real time environment we haven't worked about this service. So there is limitation about the load balancer, like where you have to define your URL of the application. Okay, so where you have to import the HTTPS there in the load balancer, where you have to generate a certificate. So I have already deployed in my environment. If you see here, so kubectl get ns. So I have deployed the e-commerce website. So kubectl get all -n. So I have deployed one e-commerce service, and you can see I am going to access this application through the URL. So if you see here, this is the URL of my application. Okay, kubectl get ing -n aks store. So here you can see I have defined the URL of the application. So by using this URL you can able to access the application. So here you can see I haven't used the IP to access the application. So if you want to add some card, you have to add, and here you can in the card the item has been added. So in this way, like in the production environment, how you work. Okay, so which service we have to use, how do we make sure your application running over HTTPS. Okay, so you have to see the order has been submitted successfully. Okay, but here you can see your application not secure, and you can see that your connection to this site is not secure. So how do we create the SSL certificate, how do we import the certificate into the application, what are the way. So those things I have discussed. So I have already covered all the topics in my series. If you see here, like uh, how do we upgrade the application rollback, how do we generate SSL certificate and TLS certificate, and how to deploy application using Helm chart, and how, all the things like which service we have to use to access the in the real-time production environment. So I have already created those sessions. If you want to get access, then you can ping me over my WhatsApp number, so I will give you access. And if you have any doubt, you can ask me anytime, also providing the support. So you have to contact me on my WhatsApp number, or you have to also drop me on my number. And apart from this, the part of service, I have created a multiple use case scenario. Like if you, because cluster upgradation is a mandatory task, so what all the pre-check and post-check we have to follow during the cluster upgradation, what are the, how do we check the compatibility metrics with the cluster upgradation, how do we check the my existing application is compatible with the latest version of Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so those things like I have discussed. Suppose you have to upgrade Kubernetes version from 1.29 to 1.30, and your application version is running 1.10, but this 1.10 version is not supported to this Kubernetes version. So you have to upgrade also the application version. So how do we upgrade the version using the Helm chart? So those things I have discussed. The same process I follow in my real-time project. So I'm working the same environment, and all the things what I process, what the steps I followed in my real-time project. So based on that, I have covered all the things in my lab also. Okay, so the similar way also, like if you have the backup and restoration, like which backup tool we have to use, and how do we authenticate to backup, if my backup is failing, how do we overcome this issue. So I have covered all the use cases there. If I have triggered the backup and my backup has been failed, so how do we fix those issues. Okay, I am unable to install the available tool, so how do we fix those issues. So those things I have covered in this session. Like here you can see there are a lot of customer requirements are there. So I have created more than 20, more than 15 plus customer requirement I have created, so that you will get also real-time exposure in Kubernetes, and you will be more confident during the interview. Okay, because what all the issue I face in my project, so based on that I have created those sessions, so that you can check like what are the root cause of the issue, how do you fix the issue. So if interview ask you, tell me about your challenges you face during the cluster upgradation, or tell me, give some example about your, give some example of your case scenario or troubleshooting method, or give me some challenges recently you face in your project. So after watching this all the series, you can be more confident, and you can explain to the interviewer that I work on this type of issue. Okay, and these are the so you will get more confident. You can also do the practice in your lab also. So these are the things like what I have covered in my session. So how do we take backup and restoration? You can see it's all 1 hour, so 20 and 30 hours session like I have covered on the topics. Okay, so same like I have also you access the Jenkins application by the URL. So how do we configure this URL in the service? So where we have to import the SSL certificate. So all the things I have covered in this session. So if you watch this session, you will be get idea about how do we deploy the service to access the production environment, and how do we create deploy the application use the Helm chart, how do we roll back the application using Helm chart. So those things I have covered. So these are the things what I have covered. So if you need more details about my series or content, you have to call me, you have to ping me over my WhatsApp. Okay, and I will give you the details about my content. So thank